I want to start with you, Don, and dive right in. What can you tell us, Don, about this second debris field, where it is in proximity to the first debris field that was found, and if there's any new information involving the second debris field?
Well, it's actually a impact site. That's in fact what we call it. The remains of a egg-shaped pod about the size of a Volkswagen Beetle, based on all the eyewitness accounts, including military and civilian, describe this location about 35 to 40 miles north of Roswell. And it's where this pod and its crew, a number of bodies, and a survivor, based on, again, first-hand testimony, were recovered back at the time of the incident.
Ben, when you go out to these sites, when you went out to this second debris field, as it's been called, I mean, what can you do now since it's been so long? How do the metal detectors work? Sort of walk us through the process when you and the other investigators go out there.
Well, it's actually been really exciting for us because I've been out now about 3 or 4 times to the site, which is near Corona. That's about 2.5 hours out from Roswell, the actual, what we call the debris field. The new site, though, like Don says, is kind of the impact site, which is only about 40 minutes outside the city. And we go out there, we try to systematically, see from Corona in towards town what kind of direction it may have been going, and therefore where we want to focus on the scope of the ground search. We had a backhoe, we had several people doing kind of grid searches. We don't even know if this material is metallic. So that's a big problem, right? So as we're searching anything that looks anomalous, we take that, we mark it just like you'd be, doing a crime scene investigation, and then we go get it analyzed to see if anything, shows up that would be not even just necessarily exotic material, but something that could have been made here but seems out of place. I mean, we're looking at every possible option right now.
Don, has anything of interest been found out there? I mean, I would have to think, if the reports are true that something crashed out there and the government was involved, I would have assumed that they would have gotten everything back then. I mean, are there still items to be found, do you think?
Well, we would not be wasting time if we didn't feel that we could make at least certain confirmations. We certainly have plans to return back to the debris field, and mainly because there were traces, elements, artifacts that were discovered for decades thereafter. And that was an area that covered almost a mile long in scope. And as a result, as any crash investigator would tell you, that there's absolutely no way that they could possibly recover every last piece of evidence. And so with the constant wind and rain erosion, that things come to the surface. And as a result, the Air Force has been out there for decades as well. In fact, the ranchers would confirm that they have been catching Air Force officers out there, even into recent times, still searching and making sure that every last piece was recovered.
Ben, I would imagine a lot of the people who may have been witnesses back in the 40s have now passed away because it's been so long. Is there anyone still alive? I mean, is someone documenting what they said? Because obviously it's going to be more difficult to investigate now without, people who survived.
Well, that's a great question. In fact, what I guess you could say kind of sold me on Roswell, that something happened here, was the first book that I ever read that was authored by Don here. And when I saw the number of witnesses, hundreds, both firsthand and secondhand, that came forward, I wanted to know, is there anyone still alive I could talk to? And I had the chance to interview someone who was a child at the time who handled the material. Her dad was with the fire department, brought it home. She handled it there at the kitchen table. And in a matter of time, the military police came over and actually threatened her with her life. And when she retold this story to me, she's now passed, but she was in tears, and you could see the emotion that she legitimately felt, that she thought she was going to be removed from her family and killed if she ever talked about this. So I had another witness, the son of someone who, again, problem is they passed away, but they have affidavits from so many of these people whose father was part of what they call the Air War College that happened the next spring. And he was invited out to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where we know a lot of this material went. Anyways, he handled the debris from Roswell and told his sons right before he passed away that he saw bodies, and one of them actually was still alive. It was not human-like, but not human. And that they were asked to kind of weigh in on what they should do with the situation. So I think when you put all these together, it makes a really good case that why would people, even though they're past now, on their deathbeds, make these confessions to their own children, and some of them have so much emotion and traumatized by it yet, today.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider, and don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.